and welcome to this special show on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. 11 years ago, on the 16th of December 2012, a horrifying incident left Delhi and all of India shaken to the core. A young paramedic student was sexually assaulted, gang raped and brutalized in a moving bus in South Delhi. Her injuries were so unimaginably grievous, she died days later. That chilling incident triggered a nationwide movement. People across India came out on the streets demanding justice for Nirbhaya and safety for women. The protests went on for days, forcing the government of the day to enact new anti-rape laws. Many saw that as a watershed moment for the women of India. Many had hoped that safety of women would finally become a priority for the powers that be, and that things may finally change. But 11 years on, has anything changed for the women of Delhi or for the women of India? The unfortunate answer is no. Just look at the crime data of the last few years. Delhi, India's capital, has earned the dubious distinction of being India's rape capital. Many surveys have ranked Delhi amongst the most unsafe cities for women globally. There have been countless Nirbhayas across this country, even in the last 11 years. Nirbhayas of all ages, castes, classes, across regions, cities and states. And forget about statistics for a moment. Ask any woman anywhere in India if she feels comfortable even walking on the streets alone after dark. And the less said about the national capital, the better. As we mark the 11th anniversary of the spine-chilling Nirbhaya case, we're asking, have any lessons been learnt at all? Has any police force in India got its act together? Does any government care about women's safety? Will women's safety ever be an election issue in this country? Will anything ever change for the women of India? Let's put those questions to our guests. Joining me on the show, Ranjana Kumari, social activist, writer and director of the Center for Social Research, Sunita Ojha, Supreme Court advocate, Aditi Anil Jain, educator and social activist. Also joining me here in the studio are my colleagues, Navriti Mohan and Geeta Datta. A warm welcome to all my guests. If I could start with Sunita Ojha. Sunita, I distinctly recall covering the horrific Nirbhaya case. I remember covering those protests that had shaken the foundations of this country. Everything that happened in the heart of India's capital, at India Gate and across the country. And even though for me as a woman, it was absolutely horrifying, to talk about what had happened to this young woman who came to be known as Nirbhaya, a lot of us still saw a glimmer of hope even amidst all that gloom. Because we thought that finally the issue of women's safety was center stage in this country. A lot of us thought that finally the Nirbhaya case, as tragic and horrific as it was, would probably prove to be a watershed moment for the women of this country, for women's safety in this country. But let's be honest, 11 years down the road, has anything changed for the women of Delhi or for the women of India? I personally believe the answer is no. What are your thoughts? Could you please unmute yourself, Sunita? We can't hear you.
A very good evening to all of you. And thank you for having me over on this occasion. I would first like to start with the positive developments that took place. As a lawyer and as a practicing lawyer, and I would say that in terms of legal changes, in terms of laws being put in place, there was a series of, in 2013, right from your Sexual Harassment Act, to amending the laws as far as the CRPC is concerned, Evidence Act is concerned, IPC is concerned, 2013 Act was definitely a watershed in terms of broadening the definitions, bringing in issues like stalking, voyeurism, all those things came under the cover of what is called Indian Penal Code. Now, when we look at the, even in terms of judgments, sorry, even in terms of judgments, the issues relating to how to examine victims of sexual violence, from judgments from Supreme Court to High Court and percolating down, it is emerging. It is a constant. It's a constant sort of a step forward. Creating infrastructure for vulnerable witnesses. These are the things that we have seen as a lawyer, which as practicing before the courts, the positive developments which have taken place. Having said that, the issue which remains worrisome is the first stage where a woman who has suffered violence and who has suffered violence interacts with the state machinery, that is the police level. Now, that is one level where, despite all the legal changes and despite all the amendments and the judgments coming in with very positive directives in terms of how to handle these cases, we still do not see, and that is the impact that has a direct impact on their lives, unless and until the investigation and the dealing of police with the victims and how these cases have to be investigated in a sound manner, and collecting of evidence in a more scientific manner. I personally see that the real benefit to the women in general and to society in general and women in particular, that will remain a dream, sort of to say, which is quite unfortunate. Because safety is the first thing, right, to life, to feel secure and safe. That's one of the basic ingredients of, living in a society, living in a state. So that's just an opening here, but I'm happy to add more.
Sure, we will come back to you, Sunita, and I do not wish to dismiss what you've said. Of course, these are important facts that you've stated. We're all aware that there was this Justice Verma Commission that was set up by the then UPA government in the aftermath of the Nirbhaya case, and we all know that new and more stringent anti-rape laws were enacted in this country. There was more done to sort of crack down on sexual harassment and stalking and voyeurism and many other sexual crimes against women. Having said that, and on this point I want to go across to Ranjana Kumari. Ranjana Kumari, I honestly don't care about how cynical I sound, but as a journalist who's closely observed what's happened in this country, even in the aftermath of Nirbhaya in the last 11 years, and as a woman who lives in this country, like I said, forget even about statistics for a moment. Ask any woman if she feels safe walking alone on the streets after dark, and you will have your answer as to whether we are any safer as a country for women as we were before Nirbhaya. The question I would simply want to ask you is this. Yes, we have more stringent anti-rape laws. Yes, the death penalty was introduced, and many people had thought that might be a deterrent. But come on, what has changed on the ground? As I said at the start of the show, we can go on talking about these fabulous laws that exist on our statutes, but fact of the matter is there have been countless Nirbhayas even since 2012 across this country, Nirbhayas of all ages.
Well, Neha, I remember, of course, and you also just said in the beginning of the program that you covered when Nirbhaya happened. We were let me recall the little bit of that incident when we walked up to the Monirka police station, we protested, a lot of JNU students had come, other university students had come, and then of course we decided to have the protest at India Gate 4 nights in this cold. We were there, I was personally there. So I know how the response of the state at that point of time was very, very brutal. They were not willing to even discuss it. There was no statement made, and of course after that Verma Commission, we all made recommendations. Personally, again, I went and with my team to speak to Verma Commission and gave all kinds of, look at all aspects of sexual assault, and we made our recommendations. So as far as the law is concerned, we made a robust attempt, and also we got a robust law to deal with that. And finally, of course, Nirbhaya's culprits were punished and they were all hanged. But now to answer your question, has anything changed? Now let me look at the statistics, as you already have reported from your program, that consistently there is a growth in violence against women. Because it's growing, that's why it's getting more reported. So you can't say because it's getting more reported, so we're getting more data. In fact, a lot of states are discouraging the police to report the data, so that they don't figure into first five or things like that. So growth in violence against women, 7.1%, as you said, out of crime is sexual assault. So that's growing. We hear one after the other more gruesome stories of getting women killed, getting them chopped into pieces, and all kinds of, brutality inflicted on women. So on the one side, nature and form of violence will become more gruesome and brutal. On the other side, when you look at the story of the four different, one, of course, the bystanders and the society at large, I don't see much change there, because, starting from punishing a woman whose boy has gone away with some other girl because he's in love, which happened just in Karnataka or any other state for that matter, bashing a woman, beating her, all forms of brutality every day. And because social media is so close home, you can literally experience what's going on with women. You feel much more chilled in your spine that, my goodness, what's happening to women of our country. Now let's talk about the the judiciary, the justice delivery system. When you look at the number of cases pending, even in case of domestic violence, where we had ensured that we will have 60 days within which the judgment will come, hardly there is any case where 60 days judgment comes. It takes 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. And excuse me for saying this, but I think lawyers also complicate. They take the woman through into 6 cases, 7 cases, then date after date. So nothing is happening. Even sexual assault cases, we are hardly getting more than 23% judgment, even now, which I'm sure, Neha, you must be remembering when I made these statements in the earlier programs with you and many other channels. Yes. So I think it's important to see that justice delivery system has not been pulled up for not delivering justice to women swiftly and certainly. Now, the other aspect is about police. We were asking for special police force to be trained so that they know how to investigate quickly. They know how to reach out. Even today, Neha, we called the number where you were supposed to get response. Nobody picked up the phone. Even just for the sake of calling, we called Child Rights Commission, which is supposed to be given to children in cases of all kinds of, problem, that they can call you. Nobody picked up the phone. So, this is what is happening to our system. I think somebody will have to take a call and really pull up these systems. Systems are in place.
In my opinion,
they have to be functional. Now, my last point is that in spite of the fact that so much of noise was made about hanging the rapist, we of course we have our own view about
that's not helped. It's not been a deterrent at all.
How many have really been finally taken to that course of action?
Absolutely.
There is a chill, there is a
it is supposed to have a chilling effect. It's supposed to be deterrent, but it's not been one. As a matter of fact, the reality is that it is certainty of punishment that acts as a deterrence and not necessarily severity of punishment. Have we seen that? No, we haven't. Ranjana, fact of the matter is that I remember covering this case and interviewing you around that time, and in the last 11 years, you and I have done countless shows on horrific crimes against women in this country, and 11 years after Nirbhaya, you and I are once again on a television show discussing the exact same thing, that women in this country are not safe. So as cynical as I sound as a journalist and as a woman who lives in this country, I have no hesitation in saying nothing has changed. We need to take a quick break at this point, but don't go anywhere because we will continue with this discussion on the other side.
Worst 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा।
There is certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. You're watching our special show on the 11th anniversary of the horrific Nirbhaya case. And the question we're asking is, has anything changed for the women of Delhi and for the women of India? Well, that sounds like a rhetorical question. Let me go across to Aditi Jain at this point. Aditi, yes, we had new laws being enacted, and we were all hoping that something would change, that finally women's safety was going to take center stage in this country, and that finally the government of the day was waking up to the reality that the women of this country had had enough. But 11 years down the road, as we look at the horrific crime statistics that have come out of the National Crime Records Bureau over the years, as we look at the horrific reports that are that come out in the media every other day from different parts of the country, as we look at the deeply flawed justice delivery system that continues to fail the women and girls of this country, and as we continue to look at how the policing in this country is so deeply flawed and frankly in many ways completely loaded against women, what are your thoughts on whether any lessons have been learned in the last 11 years?
This is a very serious day, and we all need to take it at least annually once into our minds, into our brain, into our soul. What a crime had happened in 2012. The crime has been incessant for always, as we have seen and as you are discussing. Shouldn't we, think of a day when nothing like this happens? That means the crime against women has not been taken very, very seriously. If even one case is reported, what is it that we are living in? What kind of a society are we living? When we see the statistics, we see 25% increase. After Nirbhaya, when the entire nation woke up to the cruelty, to the gruesomeness of the case, how can things like this happen? Yes, we need to take it seriously. Unless we start questioning how even one case is happening. And major cases happen day after day. I mean, even if you see Delhi, just Delhi, forget about the nation, you would see more than 1,500 cases. This is absolutely shameful for a nation that talks of culture. We need to implore the attention of the government to this side. I'm sure they are doing their best, but if we are not feeling safe in this country, that means law and order is not in its place.
I think it is a crying shame. I agree with you 100%. We are a society that claims to worship women. We talk about wanting to emerge as a fully developed nation by 2047. We want to compete with the superpowers of the world. We can't even keep our women and girls safe. Forget about everything else. I want to turn to my colleagues at this point. Geeta and Nivriti are here with me in the studio. Geeta, I have always believed that unless something like women's safety becomes an election issue, an issue that you actually cast your vote on, no government seems to care, no political party seems to care. When Nirbhaya happened 11 years ago, I would say that the nationwide protest practically brought the then UPA government led by Manmohan Singh to its knees, where they had to come out, address the protesters in the streets and give them an assurance that this was a watershed moment in India and that there will not be another Nirbhaya. And a lot of us believed that would be the case. But it isn't, Geeta.
No, it isn't at all. In fact, if you remember, it's because of that, because of the protests, we've all covered it. They launched the Nirbhaya Fund. They put in 1,000 crores. It's gone up after that. The funds are still not fully utilized and they are limited to certain amount of states. But you're right, until and unless you don't make it. Okay, I'm going to sort of distinguish it in three things. It's police apathy, political apathy, and selective outrage. That's exactly what is happening currently in terms of, in the beginning of the year, we saw Anjali. You remember she was driving back on the scooter.
On a scooter.
And the drunk guys hit her and she was dragged. And then they found her body. She was naked. I remember reading Nirbhaya's medical report. And trust me, that's the first time and the only time I actually went to the loo and I threw up. It was so horrific to read. Constantly, all of us are working. We work in a organization, in an industry where we go home late. And you remember what happened with Soumya
Vishwanathan
and
case.
You heard what
and the then Chief Minister said girls should not be too adventurous.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my point is just that I understand the facts and I understand the figures, and I agree with the fact that there is no policing, and I understand the facts that the police can't be everywhere, but I also want to take it slightly deeper, and I want to know, why are women getting this? Why are we at the receiving end?
Why are we second-class citizens
Why
in our
are
own
we
country?
Exactly. I mean, I am scared to drive. I love driving. I am driving. I drive and I'm, the music is on or whatever, and I turn around and a guy is overtaking me, and I just make an eye contact. And it's 100% strike rate, Neha. You will find the car starting to follow you.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what to do. There are times when as I've gotten closer to my house, I'm scared because I don't want that person to know where I am living. Yeah. So I'm thinking in my mind, which is the closest police station that I can drive into. And then I go there.
Or whether there is a phone number that you can call. And Ranjit Kumari just said, nobody's going to answer your phone, so don't even bother.
Not at all. Not at all. So, it is... At so many levels, it's so scary. And this is for somebody like me, and I'm normally not scared. I remember driving back home one day late night after doing a night shift, working in our previous organization. And I had this guy, it was 6 in the morning, and I wanted to take a longer route because it was beautiful weather, and I was cooped up in the Edit Bay, right? And this guy in a BMW came, and he started following me. And then I reached a stage where there was a wider road, and I saw a policeman stand right across. And I said, okay, I overtook him and I hit my brakes because I was like, let him ram my car. I was willing for him to. He was horrified when he saw that I reacted. I got screamed at by all friends and, even my bosses saying, why did I do something like that?
Yes.
But the point is,
the fear
and frustration.
Exactly. And that is what I want to discuss with Nivriti. Nivriti, we can talk for hours about how we brought these fancy new laws and how we were supposed to crack down on sexual crimes against women, in the aftermath of Nirbhaya. And we can talk about the Nirbhaya Fund, and we can talk about the Justice Verma Commission, and we can talk about the death penalty that was introduced. Fact of the matter is, as Geeta just pointed out, Indian women live in constant fear. That is our reality. So I want to ask again and again, what has changed since Nirbhaya?
Look, nothing has changed, as we are displaying the figures as well. So in 2020, there were 3.7 lakh cases. In 2021, there were 4.2 lakh cases. And now in 2022, there are 4.4 lakh cases. So it is constantly increasing. And, stalking of women is a normal thing in our society. जब हम जाते हैं और कोई बोलता है कि लड़की को किसी ने छेड़ा है, तो आपको लगता है कि it is so normal. It happens. It happens in the society. Yeah. This is so normal. Yeah. And that is why we don't wake up until something happens. So, to realize that we need security in buses, to realize that we need security at bus stops, we need some first aid in PCR vans, you wait for a Nirbhaya case to happen. So, after the Nirbhaya case happened, there were a lot many things that were planned, that the authorities,
how many
the
of
government
those were executed? Nimriti, the Nirbhaya fund remains unspent year after year.
Yeah, it remains unspent. Only 70% of it has been utilized until now, and 30% remains unused. And out of this, also 60% is used only in 8 cities. Can you imagine that? Only in 8 cities. So is rape or crime against women is it centered in cities only? Is it not happening in rural areas?
It is so much worse. So much worse, and a lot of those stories are never even reported in the media. You know what they said about Nirbhaya? I hate to say this, but one reason why most people believed, and Geeta, very quickly your thoughts on this, that the reason why Nirbhaya shook up the foundations of this country is because, you know, people said that she was one of us. When people like us, the PLU syndrome that a lot of Indians suffer from, when people like us get targeted, that's when we talk about it the most, that's when the media reports it the most. But when something like this happens in a small town or a village, I don't know how many of these stories even get reported.
And when it happens in a small town, it is often influential people.
With the exception of Kathua, I would say. With the exception of Kathua, I don't know how many of these cases have even been reported.
No, none. I can't remember of any cases that have been reported. I don't, and most of them, you know, like she said, there are people who are influential in B town, C town, D town, and they just manage to get away. So there is this law, there is this, you know, there are these politicians, their sons, people who influence, who are, you know, I don't want to single out only politicians, but yes, there is all of this happening, and 50% of your workforce that is, you know, that can help take India to Amrit Kal, as we want to go, where we are heading, is you know, is not able to step out because they're scared, or if they fight and step out, then they are, even that happens, you know, there are times when they may not be raped, but they're being molested or even raped. They are scared to tell their parents or go to the police because they have chosen, they fought with their parents and they've stepped out.
And not only that, the victim blaming that happens in this country, and the victim shaming that happens, and make no mistake, the police, I think, are absolutely the worst when it comes to victim blaming and victim shaming. And I want to discuss that with Ranjana Kumari and the others on the other side of this very short break.
Yes, the scale of the attack surprised us.
When you get a series of alerts, 16 intelligence alerts, if Maharashtra government at that time had alerted the Coast Guard and the Navy, this 2611 would not have happened at all.
And one of the details they had planned was to use these dhagas to mislead the investigative agencies.
All this was to be presented as a Hindu terror. So it was a Pakistan operation. The LAT was the front end.
As the attacks were on, it was clear that they were planned and launched from Pakistani territory.
For all of those victims of terror that was exported from Pakistan over the years, including but not limited to 2611.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Literally every major power in the world is gearing up with its own digital currency. And so is India. But India's UPI has taken digital transactions to the next level. So, with UPI already available, what exactly is the use case for the e-rupee?
This and more streaming on world's first news OTT. News9 Plus, download now.
Hello everyone, Namaskar. I'm music composer Ricky Cage. 3-time Grammy Award winner and a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador. And you're watching me on First Person on News9 Plus.
This and more streaming now on the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. You're watching our special show on the horrific Nirbhaya case that rocked this country 11 years ago. And the question we're asking is, has anything changed for the women of this country since then? I want to go back to Sunita Ojha at this point. Sunita, you know, we can discuss the statistics, the crime data, and all the laws ad nauseum. But as a lawyer who's obviously observed a lot of these cases very closely, I want to ask you a very simple question. Why have none of these things, especially the new laws, acted as deterrents? Why is there no fear of the law in this country? Why have the police failed the women of this country so miserably and continue to do so every single day? And why is it that 99.9% of women in this country would rather not walk into a police station and report a sexual crime? Is that a fact or not?
First of all, the only one word to this answer, why, is mindset. Nothing has changed as far as the mindset is concerned. Now, coming back to, like you said, it is not the severity of punishment which will act as a deterrent, but certainty. Look at the domestic space. We have violence, protection of women from domestic violence. There are interim orders that one can get immediately. Now, when they talk about urgent immediate orders, that means we should have a system where they collaborate. And the law is very specifically, it talks about collaboration at various levels. And a woman who is facing violence at home should be able to get, you know, protection orders from violence, security to her child, security to her financial health. But like Ranjana ji pointed out, it takes months even to get those basic minimum orders. Now, having law itself will not create that feeling of security. Having the certainty that if I raise my voice against a certain kind of violence, whether it is at a domestic space or at a workspace, I would get response, I would get action, and I would get remedial measures. That is something that needs to be secured for a woman to really feel secure, in the sense of feeling secure. Now, so that one part, domestic violence law in that sense, has really not been able to help women the manner in which it should have been held. It should have been able to provide relief to women. Similarly, when we talk about the workplace, now Sexual Harassment Act, POSH Act came in 2013. We have created ICC. I have cases where women within the ICC are being cross-examined for 5 days, 6 days. Sometimes we feel that, yes, if it was in the court, one could actually intervene and say, you cannot have these ad nauseum cross-examinations. But it is happening because why? ICCs are not trained. You have created ICC, the law creates a system of ICC, gives them a power of the court. Now, if the ICCs are not properly trained, what is happening there is basically a big drama where, you know, everything that we have achieved in terms of progress of jurisprudence, nothing gets applied. So constantly a woman who raises her voice against a certain kind of behavior at a workplace is then seen as a troublemaker.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So therefore, so these two important spaces, you talk about domestic space, you talk about workspace. If we have not been able to create that safety net, how is the woman supposed to feel safe? Now, talking about the public space, we will go at later stage that the crime in general. But these two spaces, they need to be, and we have laws for it. And those laws itself provide sensitization, the training, the laws itself talk, but the fund is required for that. Not just the fund, you need consistent approach. For example, even for having members in ICC, please provide a system where they are trained, they know how to deal with these cases, how to provide them interim reliefs. For example, a woman has complained of being sexually harassed in a workplace. Why should it take months to even provide her a safe place to work? Because that is also affecting your productivity at the end of the day. So the in fact, the laws are not being implemented, because I would say that even these laws conceptualize, they provide for mechanism how they can be effectively implemented, but those sections, they get ignored.
Yes.
And on the other hand, I do want to point out there is a backlash. There's a constant this thing about there are too many laws for women, the law favors women, and therefore you have these voices about the men.
At the drop of a hat, you have women, you have men shouting from the rooftop saying there is so much abuse and misuse of domestic violence laws and dowry harassment laws and this, that and the other, and yet the plight of women remains absolutely the same. Okay, so Sunita is making an important point. She says when women, a lot of women, can't feel safe at home and at the workplace, and we talk so much about posh, I don't know how much it's changed. How do you expect them to feel safe in public spaces on the streets? Ranjana Kumari, let me come back to you this point. You know, I think all dimensions of criminal jurisprudence seem to be stacked against women, especially in this country. I have no hesitation in saying this, however cynical I may sound. But I want you to focus, as somebody who's worked in this area extensively, I want you to focus in particular about the spectacular failure of policing in this country. You know, we talked so much about how there needed to be a sensitization of the police. There was talk about creating all women police stations. Forget about helplines, they never seem to work. And then, as if it's not bad enough that the police don't seem to take a lot of these complaints seriously, to make matters worse, you have a lot of victim blaming and victim shaming that happens, and I dare say it starts at the level of the police, which is why most women don't even want to walk up to the police. What has your experience been in this area, Ranjana?
See, one thing, Neha, that we have all heard and we all agree with, I think there is general consensus that, you know, victim blaming is a kind of norm at the police stations. You know, first response would be, oh, she must have done something wrong. You know, look at the way she's dressed up, bahut chalu hai, ye, and, you know, they just kind of put women in the kind of brackets that they have, in social brackets they have in their mind, and start kind of blaming her. But what is very important here to understand, Neha, that, you know, the police system is already kind of, you know, not responding, because so many cases are in the court pending, and every time they have to be there or the cases are being just discussed, and every time the dates are being extended, then what is happening is there's a pile up. And since we deal with on daily basis such cases, and I just want to give you a very concrete example of Delhi. There a senior police officer who married a Northeast girl, and they were from two different tribes. And there was, of course, a big fight, and somehow the marriage happened. And finally, of course, now he's living with another person, supposed to have a child from the other person. And this woman is going pillar to post. And all of them have ganged up to save this IPS officer in Delhi, and not trying to, you know, help this woman. And when she walks into our place, they say, oh ma'am, she is already earning, she has 2 children, can't she take care of them? If he doesn't want to live with her, then how can we put them together? Well, we are not asking for that. She's not asking for that. She wants this man to pay for it, the education of the children. She wants the share in the property that they have built together. So many things. I mean, so it's not really, you know, so this is the mindset that, oh, she has the wherewithal, and a lot of educated girls are working these days. They are not dependent in the way that they define dependence, and they don't want shared responsibility of the family. So a lot of their own mindset is still not changed, whatever sensitization we may talk about. And also the administrative system of the policing, you know, is also not looking at how to immediately respond, deal with that. And then no auditing is happening. Have you ever heard of any auditing of how these cases have been dealt with, what kind of a response women feel they have received. You just now said that, we think that police doesn't, women don't believe in police because you don't want to vote 90, I think something like 97 point, the data that you quoted. I think that's the reason. Why should women walk into the police station? If they find no protection, they find no support system, they only are blamed. Most of the cases, and imagine a small city town girl in somewhere in Uttar Pradesh, in this Varanasi district. I mean, since I come from there, going into a police station and complaining, smaller Gandapura, whatever place that is a kasbah is. Do you think they will ever have the courage to walk? Their family will have courage to walk into a police station? No.
If a woman living in South Delhi is going to think 10 times, Ranjana, I shudder to think what a woman in the rural hinterland of UP would be going through if she were to find herself in a situation like that. Please go ahead, complete your point.
Yes, I just wanted to say, Neha, but your question which you put to the previous panelists is extremely important. There is politics over violence against women. So we do see this party saying that to that party, that state it is happening. So there are various kinds of discourse that opens if a very serious crime happens. Unfortunately, it gets reported also in the same manner. So they start playing politics. But when it comes to politicians engaging in crime against women, so many rape cases, so many things that politicians have been responsible for against crime against women, everybody is covering their own. Every political party is covering their own.
The list is endless.
The wrestlers.
Yes, the list is
endless. The wrestler
endless.
sexual harassment case, yes.
So when you see these people getting scot-free, these people are not being punished, then how do you really feel that society, the person who's creating this kind of a condition and committing this crime on a daily basis, why will any fear be there? Because they all think, men think, it's all question of power relations. So men connive with themselves, and police, administration, politician, they all become one, and this woman is isolated, single-handed, fighting every stage, everybody. And this is the scenario at the moment, and that is why we are not. So two things. One, women-led development. After G20, we are talking about women-led development. So, should such women be suffering the way they are suffering, the kind of violence that is growing in a country which is women-led, where development is happening because women are leading? And also, you are seeing how people are not responsible to give the real power to women. Even in spite of the fact that this whole Nari Vandan, whatever bill has been passed, women reservation bill for which we have been fighting for 27 years, we are very happy. It is a historic decision. But then what?
Wait to see it become a reality first, Ranjana, before I pop the champagne. I will want to first see it working on the ground, being implemented by political parties in this country before I start the celebrations on that one. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Aditi, I want to come to you now. So, the police in this country clearly inspire no confidence in the women to walk up to them and report a crime. There is this huge pendency of cases that you have in the courts. There was a lot of hype around fast tracking of cases. I don't know what happened to that. We are talking about the problem of mindset. Something that hasn't changed in all these years. It may take another 100 years. I don't know. It may not happen ever in our lifetimes. And then there is this whole issue about political parties not caring enough, maybe because this is not an election issue ever. So my question, Aditi, really is, where do we even begin?
All I can say to this is that we shouldn't stop. We should not wait year after year for the 15th of December to talk about it. If we are consistent and at it, I'm sure the public opinion will matter. And justice will come to these unfortunate girls and women who go through these atrocities. Atrocities of sorts that char them for life. They don't stay the person they were born as. Their mental stability, everything goes for a toss. But at the same time, I would say, I left America in 1994, and for education, for having my child in India, and I delivered him in less than 23 days. Everybody thought I was very, very, insane in doing something like this and not giving him birth. I said, no, I need to give him birth in India. This is the land I want to bring him in. And there's so much to do in this land. And when I started education, educating him. I didn't want to give him into anybody's hand. I want to say that in nearly 30 years, where I was in the MHRD ministry in front of all the education ministers of India, people thought that I was just ranting something that was baseless. I was saying that class 1 should not start at 5 years, at least 7, if not 8. And now I'm so happy that, chalo, it's taken 3 decades, but at least in the new education policy, class 1 is starting at 7 years of age.
Great. I must say, great decision by you, Aditi. I applaud you on that. But, I don't know how many parents across this country really take the education of their boys seriously when it comes to how they should treat the women and girls in their lives.
This is what it's what even our Prime Minister said. That you need
लड़कियों को मत समझाइए, अपने लड़कों को समझाइए. And I think he said this from the ramparts of the Red Fort on Independence Day.
Yes, in the
but
first speech.
That is,
If we all start doing it at our individual level, I'm sure things will happen. They say negativity needs recognition to get its strength. It ceases to exist if you don't recognize it.
Where is the recognition of this, Geeta? No less than the Prime Minister of this country has had to say, stop lecturing girls about how to dress, how to behave, whether to talk to or hang out with boys. Start educating your boys, start sensitizing your boys, tell them how to behave with women. Do you even see that happening in Indian households?
So we've seen the data that's come out. The biggest percentage are of violence against women are by husbands who have been beating up their wives, and apparently it went crazy during the COVID time. They're husband and wife, and I wanted, it's really bizarre because when you think of the woman and you're talking about, forget metros, I mean even in metros, but you're saying even forget, you go to tier 2, tier 3. So one of our panelists came up with this point. They said the 2 places where we can control a lot is home and the office. Now, how many of Me Too that came out, do you know how guys who were in it have
had to face any consequences?
Have been held accountable. They have been relaunched, whether it's film industry guys or even politicians.
And a lot of these women accusers saw their careers practically ending.
Oh, it's completely gone.
Right?
They have had one of the actresses, she's living abroad.
Yes.
And it all came back on, again, shaming and naming. When it comes to marriage, the women want, if, they are, some of them are not financially independent. So they feel, okay, if they step out, they will face the same from a stranger. So I feel that maybe that's another thing that's stopping women from stepping out, and taking all the beating that's happening. And it's bizarre. Of course, it's the men.
It is the men and the mindsets. I honestly don't know what kind of upbringing the boys and the men in this country are getting, Navriti. I mean, the Prime Minister's had to say, and many of us keep crying ourselves hoarse, saying, stop lecturing the women, start educating the boys. Is that happening in our households?
It is actually not happening. We are living in a metro city, so we can say that yes, it is to an extent it is happening, but then crime rate in cities is more than in rural areas. And if you go to rural areas, I had done a reality check a few years ago, I think somewhere near Bulandshahr, and there was a rape case that has happened on the road, on the way which goes from Delhi to Bulandshahr. So there I spoke to girls. Then the girls told me that we are always told by our parents, then they don't go out after 7, come back to home before the sun sets, and don't wear this, don't wear that.
Exactly.
So the girls who were studying in school, they were all students and they were very much agitated. So that yes, we need to educate boys that look, you don't have to behave like this. In this way, if you do that, you will save girls as well, and you will save boys also from becoming criminals.
Absolutely. I remember how much frustration there was in the aftermath of Nirbhaya, you know, with a lot of people saying, tell your girls not to step out after dark. A lot of women said, tell the boys to stop stepping out of their homes after dark. And I remember there was this movement that was called Reclaim the Night. That's the kind of anger and outrage we saw amongst women and young girls in this country. But really, what has changed? And you know, that very interesting point that Namriti brought out, girls being told what to wear. You know, we just need to ask ourselves and all those people who go around giving those lectures a simple question. A 6-month-old baby getting raped and brutalized, was she, quote unquote, dressed provocatively? Did she ask for it? But well, these are questions that we can go on asking ad nauseum. Fact of the matter is, not much seems to have changed on the ground, but as the panelists have pointed out, these are questions we need to keep asking, these are issues we need to keep raising, and these are conversations we need to continue to have. And yes, we need to remind the government, we need to remind the political parties, we need to remind the powers that be that we, the women of this country, matter. We will not accept being treated as second-class citizens. On that note, a big thank you to all my guests for joining me on this special show, and thanks to the viewers for watching.